Right now, in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series, one driver is making more headlines off the track than almost anyone else is making on it. That driver is Bubba Wallace. And before you assume this is just another story about speed and standings, understand this. The number 23 Toyota at 2311 Racing has been at the center of pit road disasters, a newborn daughter, a furious radio outburst, a confrontation with Christopher Bell, and a championship charge that nobody saw coming at this scale. Every single week in 2026, something happens around Bubba Wallace that you simply cannot script. So let's go through all of it, story by story, because every chapter of this season deserves your full attention. The 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season opener at Phoenix Raceway gave everyone an early preview of just how fine the margins are in this sport. Bubba Wallace and the 2311 number 23 Toyota were having a genuinely strong day. He was running inside the top 10, the car was competitive, and the team looked dialed in. Then came the pit road penalty that changed everything. Wallace was caught speeding on pit road by just 0.08 miles per hour over the limit. Not 10 miles per hour. Not 5 miles per hour. 0.08 miles per hour. That is a margin so small it barely registers as a number, yet under NASCAR rules, it does not matter. Over is over. NASCAR sent Wallace to the tail end of the field, costing him track position that took the rest of the race to try to recover from. He ultimately finished 6th, which is still a respectable result, but the team knew a better finish was right there and slipped away because of a fraction of a mile per hour. He was not alone in getting caught that day. Two-time Cup Series champions Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson were both caught speeding on pit road as well. 8 drivers total were penalized for pit road speed violations at Phoenix that afternoon. But Wallace's margin was the smallest of all of them, which made his penalty feel especially brutal to absorb. And then there was Ty Dillon ended up driving an entire lap around the 1-mile oval at Phoenix with that fuel can hanging on the car. Nothing dangerous happened, and for that everyone was relieved, but the image of a Cup Series car completing a full lap with the fuel can dragging along will be remembered from Phoenix 2026 for a long time. Ryan Blaney won the race for Team Penske. Wallace had to settle for 6th and a lesson about how unforgiving this sport can be when you are 0.08 miles per hour over the limit. While the Phoenix penalty was frustrating, the bigger story building around Bubba Wallace as the early 2026 season developed had nothing to do with racing penalties. It had everything to do with family. Wallace and his wife Amanda were expecting their second child, with the due date falling right around the weekend of the Goodyear 400 at Darlington Raceway on March 22nd. For anyone who follows Wallace closely, they knew exactly why this created such a complicated situation. When Wallace's first child, son Bex, was born on Sunday, September 29, 2024, Wallace was competing at Kansas Speedway and missed the birth entirely. He was vocal afterward about how much that hurt, and he made a public commitment that he would not let it happen again. So as Darlington approached, the question every NASCAR insider was asking was, what happens if Amanda goes into labor during race weekend? Wallace's spotter, Freddie Kraft, answered that question in detail on the Door Bumper Clear podcast. The team had not one backup plan. Not 2. They had 3. Kraft explained it clearly. Right now, it's like 3 plans. If Bubba's going to be gone and we know he's going to be gone, it's going to be Cory, probably, I would assume. And you've got a day to get ready and prepare the cockpit for Cory. But if it happens where we're a few hours out from the race, Amanda goes into labor, Bubba's got to leave where Bubba's already getting going, then, right now I think she's due around Darlington. Plan A was Cory Heim, the driver already confirmed as 23. She's full-time number 35 pilot for 2027. The problem with Heim as the emergency replacement was a physical one. Cory Heim and Bubba Wallace do not fit the cockpit the same way, meaning the team would need at least a full day of preparation to adjust the seat, pedals, steering wheel, and cockpit setup before Heim could safely race the number 23. If 2311 knew in advance that Wallace was going to miss Darlington, Heim was the answer. Plan B was a secondary driver who physically fit the car well enough to jump in with very little setup time, in case Amanda went into labor just hours before the green flag. That situation would not allow for a full cockpit rebuild, so having someone ready who could slide in immediately was essential. Plan C was the most improvised contingency, essentially whoever was standing nearby with the right equipment. Kraft referenced this while discussing how Myatt Snider ended up replacing Alex Bowman mid-race at COTA. Snider had simply brought his fire suit and helmet with him that day. "Whoever's standing around, get in there," Kraft said. It sounds casual, but that is genuinely how emergency driver replacements work in NASCAR at the last possible moment. On the championship side, NASCAR precedent suggested Wallace would be protected. Denny Hamlin missed the Cup Series race in Mexico City in 2025 and NASCAR granted him a waiver, keeping him eligible for the championship. The birth of a child falls squarely within the kind of circumstances where NASCAR has historically shown flexibility. Here is where the 2026 season gave Bubba Wallace a moment that will follow him for the rest of his career. Cameron Jade Wallace was born on Thursday, March 19, 2026, 2 days before Darlington qualifying. Wallace was there. He kept his promise. He was present for the birth of his daughter, unlike what happened with Bex in 2024. Then, 2 days later, he climbed into the number 23 Toyota and went out and qualified second at Darlington Raceway, putting 2311 on an all-team front row. Tyler Reddick took the pole at 169.152 miles per hour. Wallace was right behind him in second. In his post-qualifying interview on Fox Sports, Wallace delivered one of the most memorable lines of the 2026 season. "That lap for the 23 was driven by Cameron Jade. You know who that is? That's my baby girl. Just born." He had kept his promise to his family, shown up at the racetrack 2 days later, and put the car on the front row. After race 6 at Darlington, won by Tyler Reddick, 2311 Racing had Reddick first overall with 325 points and 4 wins, and Wallace third overall with 205 points. 2 cars from the same team, sitting first and third in the championship. That is a level of early season dominance that the entire garage took notice of. Just when the season seemed to be building beautifully, Sonoma happened. Or more specifically, the Enduro 250 at the Naval Base Coronado Street Course in San Diego, NASCAR's debut at that venue, happened. Wallace qualified 12th and worked his way up as high as 3rd during the race. The car was fast. The team was executing. Then came lap 18. Between turns 9 and 10, Wallace's right front tire came off. The investigation afterward pointed to a specific mechanical failure. The tire changer's air gun had been left in reverse, so by the time the error was caught and corrected, the jack had already dropped and Wallace had been sent away from the pit box with the wheel barely secured. The loose tire triggered the race's second caution and ended stage 1 early. Wallace's radio reaction was immediate and unfiltered. "There it fing went. You've got to be fing kidding me." The penalty was severe. Wallace was held for 2 laps, and 2 crew members were suspended for 2 races. On a 3.4-mile circuit where the green flag pace runs closer to 90 miles per hour than 200 miles per hour, being held 2 laps meant roughly 10 minutes of standing still, while the entire field cycled past. The race was effectively over for the number 23 from that moment forward. What made this especially painful was the history. At Richmond Raceway in 2025, during the Cookout 400, Wallace had led a career-high 123 laps and won Stage 2 before a wheel came off on lap 292 during a green flag stop, almost the same scenario. That day, Wallace made the quick decision to roll into Chase Briscoe's Joe Gibbs Racing pit box rather than risk the tire reaching the track unsecured. Briscoe's crew reattached it, but Wallace still received a pass-through penalty for pitting outside his stall. After that Richmond incident, Wallace described it as just a really freak deal where the lug nut fell off the gun, and it was such a weird transition. After Sonoma in 2026, the question became harder to brush off as a freak occurrence. To prepare for Sonoma after 2 crew members were suspended, 2311 brought in outside help. Rear changer Dante Johnson, who had spent most of the year working on Riley Herbst's entry, shifted over to Wallace's crew. Jackman Noah Massey, a regular presence on Sam Hunt Racing's number 24 car and the HFR number 62 truck, took over jack duties. The team moved into the weekend with a full roster, but the pit road execution problem remained the central conversation inside the 2311 shop. The same race weekend at the Naval Base Coronado Street Course in San Diego that went sideways for Wallace produced one of the most significant moments for 23XI Racing's long-term future. Cory Heim won at Coronado in just his 13th Cup Series start. He is already confirmed as 23XI's full-time driver for 2027 in the number 35, and that win at Coronado announced his arrival on the biggest stage in American motorsport. The win did not come without controversy. Heim deliberately crashed Carson Hocevar during the race as payback, a calculated move that could have cost Heim significantly in the standings. However, a caution from an unrelated incident involving Gray came out almost immediately afterward, which likely softened the championship consequences of that decision. The following week, Heim's crew was pulled over to help fill the gaps on Wallace's pit crew at Sonoma. A detail that showed just how interconnected the 23XI operation is becoming as it expands. Number 2026 Bubba Wallace story would be complete without the Watkins Glen chapter. After the go bowling at the Glen, cameras caught Wallace and Christopher Bell in a heated exchange on pit road long after the engines had gone silent. Speculation spread through the garage almost. Freddie Kraft attempted to pour water on the flames through social media, insisting Wallace was not upset with Bell. But by then, the story had already taken on a life of its own. At the NASCAR All-Star Race media session the following week, Wallace addressed it directly and with a laugh. "You all had it figured out, but every single one of yo mother*****s were wrong. The real cause had nothing to do with Bell at its core." John Hunter Nemechek had clipped Wallace entering Turn 1, ruining what had been shaping up as a potential top 10 or top 12 finish for the number 23. Wallace had been running lap times comparable to teammate Tyler Reddick before the contact, and he explained exactly what that moment felt like. "I got wiped out by the 42. We were in potential for a top 10, top 12 day. I got wiped out following Reddick, and when I put so much freaking effort into becoming a better road course racer. I joke with you guys that I suck and I don't give a damn about road courses. I really do. It's a competitive nature, and I push hard every time we get into the car, and at that point in the race, everything was clicking." After the contact from Nemechek, Wallace raced the rest of the field without any courtesy. Bell happened to be in the vicinity at the wrong moment. Wallace admitted it plainly. "Whoever else was in that mix, I didn't care just because my race was ruined 30 seconds beforehand. They have no idea, so I put myself in their shoes. What you see on pit road, see Bell is pissed that I raced him so hard, and that was simply me saying, I don't give a damn. I just had my race ruined, and so I'm going to race everyone hard. I don't care who it is." Wallace later called Bell during the week with a cooler head. Bell, it turned out, had no idea Wallace had already been hit by Nemechek earlier in the race. From Bell's perspective, Wallace simply appeared to be fading on old tires and making life difficult for faster cars trying to pass. Once the full picture was explained, they reached an understanding. Bell finished P21 at Watkins Glen, his lowest result there in 6 starts. Wallace ended up P29 after the Nemechek contact, and the subsequent pit road chaos unraveled his race. The penalties have been real. The pit road mistakes have been costly. The confrontations have generated headlines. And yet, through race 6 of the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season, 23XI Racing had Tyler Reddick first overall with 325 points and 4 wins, and Bubba Wallace third overall with 205 points. They swept the front row at Darlington. They have a confirmed future star in Cory Heim, already winning races. Their cars are fast enough to compete for victories on every track type. There have also been heavy penalties along the way. Wallace, Ross Chastain, and Austin Dillon were each hit with 50 driver points and a $100,000 fine at one point during the season. RCR, Trackhouse, and 23XI owners each received a $100,000 fine and 50 owner points. Crew chiefs and spotters from all 3 teams were suspended. Booty Barker, Wallace's crew chief, was kept away from Phoenix due to a penalty that originated at Martinsville. At Talladega, Wallace was involved in a massive wreck that collected much of the field, and ended up driving backward to his pit road in a sequence that drew immediate comparisons to Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder. The season has not been short on drama. Wallace's win at Kansas last fall demonstrated his ability to close out races on big ovals. His Brickyard 400 victory at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in July 2025 was his first crown jewel win in NASCAR. He is now a three-time Cup Series winner, sitting third in points through the first 6 races of 2026, on a team that is building towards something significant. 2311 Racing, co-owned by Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, is not just competitive in 2026. Race by race, penalty by penalty, pit road blunder by pit road blunder, and baby announcement by baby announcement, they are proving themselves to be the team that the rest of the garage needs to watch. Subscribe and hit the bell. Real NASCAR stories, every single week, no filler, no fluff. Smash that like button, it takes 1 second and it tells YouTube this story deserves to be seen. Comment below, who is the most entertaining driver in NASCAR in 2026? Is it Bubba Wallace or someone else? Drop your answer and fight it out. Share this video with one NASCAR fan who hasn't seen what Cory Heim did at Coronado yet. They are missing out.